My bucolic life, we have the city strife. Horses, chicks, and dogs, they are my neighbors. I cook and some spin, and move the horses into the barn. Then time to move them out again. Red barns, green pastures, beautiful white houses. The view I see each day when I arise. This life pleases me, as it is plain to see. I'm living my bucolic life.
Hello, welcome back. So today I'm going to be starting up a new project, and last week's was very, very involved, so I want a simpler one this week, and it's going to be another little top. Here we are. This is a simplicity pattern, and I'm going to be making this version. It's got like 3/4 length sleeves and little pleats there, but it should go together fairly easily. It doesn't say easy on the pattern, but I'm assuming it will. The fabric I'm going to be using is this blue. It's a cotton woven. It's fairly substantial. It's like a very lightweight twill type thing that doesn't have the texture. And I have actually already cut out my pattern pieces. And that is because the other night I wanted to get started on this, but it was late at night and I was looking terrible and I wasn't in the mood to turn on the camera. So I just laid it out. I really didn't make any modifications because there are no darts. The sleeves were, wide enough that I think that that's going to work. The only thing I did is shorten the sleeves a little bit. And I'll turn the camera down and show you that. But other than that, I think that this will be a very straightforward little top. Okay, so we have a front cut on a fold. We have a back cut on a fold. These sleeves seem to give you a few inches of ease, which is good. But I didn't quite have enough fabric for what the pattern was calling for. So if you can see here, I just shortened my piece by folding it, giving it a little 1/2 inch deep tuck, which is going to shorten that sleeve by about 1 inch. But that's fine. I think that's going to work out well. So I got 2 of those cut out. A back facing that gets interfaced, a front facing that gets interfaced, and then this is a little yoke, and that is it. So because these are woven and they will fray, I will be serging around each and every one before I sew it together. That just kind of is my type of thing. So let me get the instructions open here. And, well, this is the last 2 pages. Let me find the first 2 and we'll see how you're supposed to put it together. Okay, so to get started here, on the back, there is a back yoke up there. And the back yoke has the back neckline. And so what they want us to do is put a row of stay stitching around these 2 necklines, and I'm going to do that at about a 1/2 inch seam allowance, slightly smaller than the 5/8 stitching line here and here. And I am also going to be serging all the way around these pieces, and when I do that, I just skim the outside edge. I'm trying my best not to cut things off, but just to overcast it so that it's not going to unravel, but I can press my seam allowances open as I need. So the way that I mark my pattern markings onto my fabric is, for the notches, I just clip them into my fabric. I know that gives some people a heart attack, but it has never caused a problem for me. And I just clip it in maybe about 1/4 inch at the most, okay? That's it for this piece. There are circles on this piece to mark up here at the armhole and over here in the front, because there is this little front V opening. So to mark my circles, if you've never seen before, welcome. What I do is I have a thick piece of leather, coaster in fact, and I put that under just my tissue paper, And then I can use my little screw type hole punch and punch out the circles that go with it. And then I can just reach through my fabric with a heat erasable pen. This is white. I can use it on my dark fabric. All right. And then that's how I mark it. I'll do the same with the circle over here on the arm. Once I have these marked up here in the front, I will come back with my ruler and just connect them so I have a nice defined seam line here. Okay, and if you're using these, they're fabulous, but you have to be patient because when you first draw with the white, it doesn't show up and then you can see it slowly appear. So anyhow, let me go ahead and get this all clipped, marked, stay stitched and serged, and I will be back. I almost forgot, down here at the very bottom, there are also 2 dots. You only use one of them. The longer view is the one I'm using. They also have a shorter view. Okay, I'm doing the longer one, so I'm cutting out the lower dot. If you're doing the shorter one, you cut out the higher dot. So that's going to be marking where there's going to be like a little vent type opening on the side of the blouse down here. Okay, so that is what it's looking like here. That's my little front marking, my stay stitching, and that end on my little yoke. Okay, so I'm going to set these pieces aside for a minute and grab my back piece. And on the back piece, in addition to the circles up here on the arm, there is a pleat in the back, and I need to mark the pleats. So before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and clip all my notches and mark this lower one down here, the arm one, and then I'll show you what we're doing up here. Okay, so for these pleats, I'm marking it on the right side, okay? And actually I have my pattern upside down, but that's okay. What I need to get is these 2 line placements marked. So what I'm going to be doing is punching a hole at the very bottom of both of these lines and at about a 1/4 inch down on both of those lines. And that's going to give me everything I need to mark it. So punching here, 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 and here. Okay, well, come on out, little circle. And then I can reach through there, make my little marks. Wait patiently for them to show up and then connect them. So here is one at about 3/4 inch in from the edge. And then the second one is over here. I don't think I marked that bottom one very well, or at least it's not showing up. Come on. Okay. There it is. So now I can draw this line, and I'm going to have to do the same thing. I'll just take my pattern piece off, flip over my fabric, and mark the same thing on the other side over here, but on the right side of my fabric. Okay, so I will be serging around this piece, but I want to get my pleats in first so that way when I serge straight across, it's going to encompass the pleats and make it less bulky. So what we're going to do is fold this center line, or the center of the 2, there's 2 center lines, and bring it over to the outside one like this, and pin it in place. Fold this one, bring it over to this line, and pin that in place. Okay, so on the instructions, what they want you to do is baste across here. I'm not going to baste across it because when I come with my serging, I'm just going to serge across it, and that's going to lock these in. So when I do that, I'll make sure that, you know, they are in the right direction. So I'm going to go ahead, do that, serge around this piece, and I'll be right back. Okay, so here she is, and after I got it stitched, I stopped over at the ironing board and pressed out my wrinkle, pressed my little pleat back here. So that looks good, I think. I'm going to be sewing my yoke onto it. So right now I'm just going to fold this in half and mark where that center point is. Go ahead and stick a pin in there too. And this is my center right here of my pleat. So I'm going to stick a pin in there so I can see it. Okay. So matching these two up and the outside corners, because they should match up perfectly. You know, if they don't, we can ease them together. And I'm going to sew straight across here at 5/8 of an inch. And when I'm done with that, I'm going to be pressing it so that the entire seam allowance is going up towards the yoke. Okay, so that is done, sewed on. It went on really nicely. Here it is on this side with the seam allowances pressed up. So now what I'm going to do is sew my front pieces, or piece, to my back piece up here at the shoulder seams. So I'm just going to lay that right side up. And I'm going to flip this so that the side that has the marking is actually on the wrong side. I think that might work for me. If not, I can always remark it. But these are going to match up. This little edge here, it's going to peek out a bit. That's okay. It's at the 5/8 inch point down here that it's going to be matched up. So I'm going to sew it at 5/8 of an inch on both shoulders and then press these seam allowances open. Okay, so there's my shoulder seams all put together. I'm going to set this aside for a minute because I need to get my facings put together, but before I can do that, I need to put interfacing on these guys. So I am going to get my typical favorite, very lightweight, fairly inexpensive, fusible interfacing. That's what I'm going to use. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and fuse it to one side of each of these pieces, and I will be right back. Okay, so I've got my interfacing fused on, you know, not being overly particular about the edges, obviously. And at this point, what I need to do is sew my shoulder seams here at 5/8 of an inch and then press these seam allowances open. Okay, so I've got that done. Now at this point, I need to finish off the outside edge here. And in the instructions, they're wanting you to turn it under, you know, just slightly, and run a straight stitch over it. And I think I'm going to do that. You could also just serge around the outside edge of this if you wanted to. That would work. You know, maybe pink it, do whatever you want to do. It's your project. But before I actually do mine, I am going to come in here and clip off a little bit of this seam allowance on these outside edges, because that's going to make it a lot easier for me. And I'm over here working on Rosie again today. Fabulous 241 Industrial. She's so fun. So I wanted to show you how I turn under that edge. Trying to get everything angled so that the light works, you know. Can be a little tricky sometimes, but I'm just going to fold in my edge so I have, you know, somewhere around a fat 1/8 of an inch, and just put my foot centered over it, and we're just going to run it straight over that so that it's just locking it in, you know, nothing really fancy here. Now doing the curves, I'm going to try to fold it a little bit ahead of where I am, put it in, and because my fold amount is so narrow, this really isn't a problem, even with this really stiff fabric. If your fabric isn't as stiff as this is, well, it should be even less of a problem. And I have Rosie dialed way down. She can go super fast, but I have her dialed way down. Now up here on where the little front area is, I'm going to try to clip it. If my little clippy scissors will let me, I should bring the other ones over here. Okay, so with that done, I can fold it up down here, if you can see, like that. Okay, and I'm just going to get to that point. Sure I don't run over my fingers. Alright, so when I get to that point, I'm going to leave my needle down, lift up my presser foot, and fold in. Fold in this side over here, okay? And then I can turn it and come this way, but there's going to be that little gap. up here, okay? Got down here to the bottom and it was just a little too dangerous, so just getting my little pointy awl. That is a lot safer to hold this fold in than my fingers that close to the edge there. So I'm using my awl. You can use the point of a seam ripper, a long needle, whatever, but something beside your fingers to get punched in there. Okay, so this is what she looks like now. You know, after I stitched it, I went over and pressed it. Okay, I had to piece my interfacing because I was trying to use up a scrap, but it's lightweight interfacing, so that's permissible. What I need to do before I attach this is transfer over that same little marking. Here is my piece here for that opening on the front. So I'm going to, you know, off camera, go ahead and punch out these circles, mark it, draw that line, and I will be back shortly. Oh, actually, sorry about that. I'm going to be doing that on the wrong side. And that way my markings are going to be visible while I'm stitching it on. That's important. So, okay, so with that done, transferred the markings there. And I'm going to point out, when I'm sewing this, I'm going to come down, take at least one big stitch across, and then go back up. Try not to come down, just pivot and go back up. You'll live to regret that. I know from experience. Anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and open this up so I'm looking at the right side of my fabric here. This is the yoke, so that is the back. And place this up here. I'm going to match up my shoulder seams first. Okay, so that seam is in line. And this fabric, it's thick. It's like a very lightweight duck cloth, I guess. That's how I would explain it. So my pins don't want to go through that many layers. So I'm just going to go ahead and use my clips to clip it together here. Okay, pull it apart and it should match up really well. So I've got clips around the back there. I'm just going to stick some pins over here to hold it completely flat while I'm working because I don't want it to shift. Okay. And I'm going to put one up here in the center. Okay, so I'm actually going to start sewing right around here. Come at 5/8 of an inch to this point. Pivot, come down, pivot, go over in it a stitch, then pivot again, come up, and then continue around. Okay, let me go ahead and get those stitches in place. Okay, so I've got that sewn now, and I'm going to need to clip some things. And I left my scissors on the other side of the room. Hang on a sec. Okay, and I'm back. So I am first going to clip straight down to where that little stitch that goes straight across is, okay? I'm not going to cross it, but I'm going to come pretty close to it, all right? So like that. Up here in the corners, I'm going to take some of that bulk out of the corners of the front here, like that. And then I'm going to get my pinking shears. Here we are. And I'm going to trim this seam allowance about halfway down, all the way around the neckline. Okay, so that should really help, but I'm also going to come where the curve is really, really tight here and put a couple extra little stick clips. And this is mostly because my fabric is so stiff. Okay, I'm going to stay at least 1/8 of an inch away from my stitching line. I don't want to come too close to that. But get these clipped in so that I can turn my facing right side out and it's going to sit comfortably. If you turn your facing and it looks like it's kind of like pulling or skewed or something, just open it up and put a few more clips in that area. It usually helps quite a bit. Okay, so now that that is done, what I need to do is kind of open it up, and we're going to understitch it. I know some people don't, and that's okay. You do you, but I think it gives a really nice finish to the garments, okay? So opening it up this way, I'm going to put the seam allowance towards the facing, underneath the facing side, okay? And then getting as close to the corner as I can. I'm probably going to be starting about 1 inch or so away. I'm going to be putting in a row, a straight stitch row right about here, okay, just on this side of my seam line, all the way around the neckline, on top of this seam allowance, okay? Okay, so this is my understitching row here. So now that that is in, I can just turn it under really nicely, go over to my ironing board and press my neckline, and the understitching is going to pull this whole seam line towards the inside. So from the outside, you shouldn't see any stitching, you shouldn't see that seam area or anything like that. It should just be nice and straight. Then down here, of course, you're also going to need to pop out these corners like so. Get your little tool to make those corners nice and straight. Now, if your bottom is looking like that, like it's got a little wedgie, well, it probably does, and I need to come in and clip just a little bit closer to my stitching line down here. So I'm just going to be very careful because I don't want to go past those stitches. And there, that's like 2 more threads, and that should do it. Sorry about that. Okay, so now when I fold it and I press it, it's going to press nice and flat. I know it looks a little bumpy there, that's from before. When I press it, it's going to look nice and flat. I just need to pop out these corners. Okay, I'm going to take a little diversion from their instructions because at this point, after you've pressed it, what they want you to do is come back and top stitch around it. Okay, to me, I like it smooth, and since I have already understitched it, that's going to, contain it from wanting to get skewed on me. So I am not going to top stitch around here. I just don't think it's necessary. But what I am going to do is come up here and do a little stitch in the ditch along this line on both of my shoulders just to lock the facing in place. So very carefully, just stitching down here in the ditch while you're sewing it. If you're going to do that, you can just try to kind of, with your fingers, pull that seam apart a little bit while the needle's going down. Or not, you do you. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I will be back shortly. Hello everybody, welcome to the next day. The next step in sewing this together is to, put it right sides together and sew the side seams. But I'm going to take a quick detour because to me, this big blueness here, it's just crying out for something. So I'm going to paint on it. And so what I'm going to do is, actually I'm going to use a darker heat erasable pen and just outline a little design. I think I'm going to do flowers and leaves because, that works. So I'm just going to draw a little flower here, a little stem off, a leaf there, maybe a little leaf here, put a little flower down at the bottom, and so on. I'm going to draw that on this side too, and then just paint it up and give it a little bit of fun. Okay, so when I am painting on fabric, I just use the little cheap acrylic craft paint, and I have found that it works really well. It does not wash off. I have things that I have painted and washed dozens of times, and the paint is still on really well, so I am not really worried about that. Let me go get a little paintbrush and we'll just start outlining things. Okay, so I put just a little bit of water in here. Got my smaller paintbrush for my vines, bigger ones for petals. And I'm just going to get started. I think if I use some yellow on top of the black, that'll give me a nice contrast. Maybe make it a little bit of green, we'll see. Why did I say on top of black? I meant on top of blue. Anyhow, let me shake this up, add some, and then I'll just show you me painting for a little bit. When I'm painting on fabric, I'm sorry, I'm shaking. I like to make my paint a little bit thinner than when it just comes straight out, and that's why I add water. Mix it up, and I found that, you know, will be a little bit better. So actually, I'm going to use my small brush, just paint in some petals here. I'm not going for super realistic painting, more just a little folk art kind of thing here. Okay, so I'm, you know, layering it up here. The first layer of paint just kind of soaks into the fabric, and then the second layer will stick on. So my first layer is a little bit darker, and then my second layer I added a little white, you know, and I feel like I should be saying something like we'll be painting some happy little branches and happy little stems and stuff here. I've had way too much coffee this morning, so my hand wants to do this, but I can't let it right now. So anyway, I'm gonna get my stems on, put some little centers into my flowers, and then just walk away and let this dry for a little bit. Once I feel like it's dry, then I'm gonna come back and iron it. And the ironing's going to erase any of my little heat erasable pen marks, but also it'll set the paint a little bit. But honestly, if you don't iron it, it'll be fine anyway. I've done it without ironing it, and it's been just fine. So yeah, this is it. It's just kind of adding a little something, but I like it. I think it adds a little bit of fun to it. Okay, so it's dry. I have given it a quick iron. It did not take very long. So that is good. We're going to go proceed with the sewing process here. So now with it, right sides together. Need to match up these side seams, and it's mostly disappeared, but right here is my little circle. So I'm going to put a pin there so I can see it. Okay, and I need to sew it from the top here down to this circle at 5/8 of an inch. On both sides, and then press these seam allowances open. Okay, I'm over here at my ironing board, and I just have my sleeve rolls stuck inside there. Makes it easier to do seams, you know, so you don't have to overlap things. So I'm just going to press this open, and then down below, where the opening is down here, I'm going to make sure that I also press that so that they're folded. Oops, you cannot see that. So that they are folded still at that 5/8 inch space the rest of the way down. Okay, now the instructions are I'm going to want you to hold off to hem this until the very last thing. But while I'm down here, I don't see a point in that. I might as well go ahead and get it started. So while I have my iron hot and everything, I'm going to go ahead and turn under one more time this little edge down here at this opening. Just tuck it in so I end up with a little folded area about 1/4 inch wide. Okay, and my bottom hem is also going to be a little narrow hem, so I'm going to be folding it up, and I'm just going to do the corners here on camera, folding that up at about 5/8 of an inch. And then tucking it under. So once I have all of this pressed though, when I open it up, I can see where all of those fold lines are. So here is my inner fold line, my outer fold line. I'm just going to cut straight across here just to take some of that bulk out, and then fold all of this back together. And that's going to make it just a little bit less bulky here, but everything's still going to be nice and protected, okay? You can miter it if you want to. I just don't think that I want to right now. And because this is at a slight angle, the way that this comes together, this is going to be hidden anyway because it's going to be folded in just a bit, okay? So when I go to stitch it, I'm going to edge stitch it along here. All right, but when I come up to the top of these, I'm going to come up, go straight across. I might even back up and go back, just so it's reinforced enough that it won't want to split open, and then come back down and keep going. So I'm going to go ahead and press my whole bottom hem like this and get it edge stitched in place. and I'll meet you back at the table. Okay, I want to show you what it looks like. Just ignore my hair right now. She fits over my dress form well, which means it should fit on me well, because things are usually a little bit tighter on my dress form. I like it that way. But I like it. I think it's a cute little top so far. So let's go ahead and get the sleeves started. All right, so I have several markings I need to transfer. I'm going to be punching out, marking my 3 dots up here at the top. For my size, clip my notches, but the thing that's going to be different is down here at the bottom we have some pleats. So just like the other pleat, even though it's not really marked here, what I'm going to do is punch a little hole at the top of each one of these pleat lines, and then again about a 1/4 inch or so from the bottom to give me a place that I can connect the dots. Okay, draw my lines in, and I'm drawing these on the right side of my fabric, okay, because that's what I want to be looking at when I'm folding my pleats. Also, before I take my paper away, the side with 2 notches is the back side. And so since this is going to be the right side of my fabric that's showing here, the inside here is going to be the wrong side. So I'm going to open that up. And on the wrong side, I'm going to put a letter B in each one of these corners so that I can remember that this is my back corner. It'll appear eventually, okay? So that I know that this is my back corner, and that way I can keep them straight, because, you know, this piece looks very similar. Very similar. I don't even know if there is a difference, but we will humor them and keep it straight. Okay, I just read the pleat directions. Should have done that before. It would be better if you draw your pleat lines on the wrong side, because they're going to have you do this in a different manner than the other pleats, okay? So I am just arbitrarily choosing this to be my wrong side now, and when I erase my B up there, it'll be fine. So we're going to do this in 2 different stages. The first one, we're going to fold our sleeve pretty much in half, and these 2, there's 3 lines on each side. Okay, these 2 here in the center-ish, I'm going to put a pin down on 1 dot, back up on the 2nd dot. Okay, bring those together. Make sure the bottom of this line is also lined up. Okay, so I have it lined up on both sides. I'm just going to anchor these in, and I need to go to my sewing machine and stitch this line. Okay, just stitch it all the way up from this dot to the very edge. I need to do that on both of my sleeves. Okay, so this is what it looks like right now, and when I go to press it, I'm going to press this flat, okay, with that seam in the middle here. But I'm not going to do that yet because I need to deal with these, and if I iron it now, my marks will disappear. So these side ones, we're going to do the same way, where we bring the 2 edges together, kind of like a dart. These are more the method you would use for making a dart than a pleat. Okay, so I've brought those 2 together, got my crease in the middle. Just going to go ahead and lock them in, stitch from up here to the edge, and then once I have both of those done on each side of both of my sleeves, then I'll take you to the ironing board and we'll press them. Okay, time to iron. So the first thing I'm going to do is deal with this center pleat. Just kind of stick my finger in the middle of it and open it up here. These 2 side pleats are going to go off to the side. All right. So let me just get all of that pressed really well. Excuse my steaming up of the camera here. So that then on the outside, this is what it looks like. Okay. So this is the inside, pleats going off to the sides on each one. Now that my pleats are pressed, and I'm going to do it one more from the outside just to make sure. See, this one was not quite unfolded all the way. Now that my pleats are in, I'm going to go ahead and serge around the outside, and I've already done this one. And so you can see when I serge over it after I put my pleats in kind of anchors it all down and makes it a lot less bulky down here at the bottom because it's only one layer. Okay, so now that it's serged, I'm going to go ahead and fold it right sides together, match up this outside edge, and stitch this at a 5/8 inch seam allowance, and afterwards press it open. Okay, I'm over here, I just pressed the seam allowance open, and they want you to do a 1 1/4 inch hem on these, or at least that's what they are allowing. So I've got my ruler, get some pins. So basically I need to turn it up 1 1/4 inches and then tuck the raw edge under. Okay, so I'm just gonna measure out the first little point and then eyeball the rest of it. Throw my ruler on the floor, of course. So if I can pin this side here, turn under the pleated part so it looks like it is about the same. Make sure all of my little pleats are folded in the right direction here before I press it. And I'm thinking that's looking pretty good. Just going to give it a quick little press and then come back, turn that raw edge under so that my little serging line's not visible, and pin that all the way around. And once I have it pinned, I'm going to come back and just edge stitch it on the machine right along this edge. Now I wanted to show you, if you sew on a flatbed machine, you can still hem little cuffs, and the way that I find it easy to do is actually put your cuff right side out. So at this point I'm going to go ahead, fold in my little edge here, and I'm going to stick my pins in so that the head of my pin is facing out. Okay, you could always do this before you turn it right side out, you know, that is perfectly fine too. So with this all done this way, what I'm going to do is start in the back, or at the underarm seam, not underarm, the center seam on my sleeve. And I open it up so I'm looking at the inside. Let me clip this little serger thread there. So I'm going to go ahead and get it placed. And then that way, as I sew, I can just kind of rotate my cuff around and I can see everything really easily. Nothing's up super tight or anything like that. So if you have a flatbed machine or a vintage machine or something, don't worry. It's still perfectly easy to go ahead and do little bitty cuffs or hems or things like that. Now, just a little bit more here. Okay, I've gone over it. Okay, back it up, go over that spot again. And she is all done, so that's not hard at all. Okay, so actually this is going to be our last step, putting these sleeves in. So I'm just turning my bodice part inside out. I'm going to work on this side first over here. So this is my front, this is my back. All right, so I want to get a sleeve that's going to fit that same thing. So with my sleeve right side out, bodice is inside out, sleeve is right side out. I'm going to check in here. Oh my gosh, I erased my marks. Well, since I erased my marks, I'm going to look at my notches. This one has 1 notch. This has 2 notches. So I know that the one with 2 notches is the back. That does not match up. So let me grab the other one here. Okay, this one has 2 notches on this side, which is the back, so that's right. I'm going to go ahead and stick it inside here. Match up my bottom seam first. Okay, and then come up here to the top. And that center dot, we put 3 dots on. The center dot is going to match up with this upper shoulder seam. Okay, so I'm going to get that matched up here. They did not tell us to put in any basting, gathering stitches or anything, so it should fit pretty well. All right, this dot should match up with this seam line where the back yoke is. So I'm just going to lay that here. it pinned in place. Now everything below that, will it match up? There's the notches and everything. Yeah, it pretty much will. Up here it looks like you might need to kind of let the feed dogs ease in a little bit, but it will fit well. Don't worry about that. Just gonna go ahead and match up my cut line, put another pin. All right, so up here between these two dots, is everything gonna fit? Yes, it will. So that's always nice, you know? Okay, coming over here to the front, I have a dot on my bodice right here. That's going to match up with the dot on my sleeve right here. Okay, so putting the pin through both of those, making sure the edge is even, and anchor that in. Put a pin halfway between the shoulder and that front dot, and down here, matching up the notch, and just above the notch. So it looks like it should go pretty well. I'm going to go ahead and go over to my sewing machine and sew it, kind of like I do with the cuff, where I place it, you know, because I have a flatbed. I place it like this so I can watch what I'm doing and just rotate it that way, okay? And let's see, how do they want us to stitch this? Twice. Okay, that's good. So the first row of stitching we're going to do is going to be at 5/8 of an inch, so right about here. After that is done, they want you to come back and do a second row of stitching about 1/8 of an inch in, so you know, about 1/2 inch seam allowance. So you're going to have 2 rows of stitching on each of your sleeves. Okay, so this is my bottom here. Got my 2 rows of stitching in, and between the notches, so here's my back notch, my front notch, I'm going to come in here. Usually I'll pink this, but this fabric is so thick I don't think my pinking shears would like it very much. I'm gonna trim it to within about 1/8 of an inch of that outside line of stitching, just between the notches. The rest of it is fine. And when we turn it, how are we going to press it? How are we going to press it? Well, they don't really say. I'm going to assume that we're pressing it towards the sleeve. So let me turn this to the right side. And so I have my seam allowances going this way out towards the sleeve. It should have fit really well so you don't have any puckers or anything up here. So once I press it, we will be done. Okay, so it is done. I think it's cute. Having that pleat in the back, if you can see it, I can move all over the place. I've got plenty of ease in there. And yeah, I didn't have to make the sleeves any bigger. I didn't have to drop any darts because there are no darts, you know. So it's a pretty user-friendly type of a pattern, but it's got enough little extra design things like those little pleats to make it fun. And I think I showed you in the beginning, I did shorten my sleeves by about 1 inch just because I didn't quite have enough fabric. But that still worked, so that's fine. This is the lower version. There was 2 different cuts. One is the lower one here, which hits, you know, right at the bottom of my rear. The next one up is going to be like about 3 inches shorter, I think, which is more at the fullest part, you know, which for me is not a flattering area. So that's why I did the longer one, but it's not so full that I can't tuck it in if I wanted to. It's just a fun little top. And because the fabric I made is almost like a canvas, really, painting, it's fun. If you ever want to paint things, why not? You know, it's fun. So anyway, hope you liked it. And that's it for this week, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Living my bucolic life, free of the city strife. Horses, chicks, and dogs, they are my neighbors. I cook and some spin, and move the horses into the barn, and time to move them out again. Red barns, green pastures, beautiful white houses, the view I see each day when I arise. This life pleases me, as it is plain to see. I'm living my bucolic life.